I am the president because I didn't show to the November meeting. We are changing the way we do meetings just a little bit. We're trying to make them a little more relevant to people. So every meeting is going to include a production horror story. Every meeting is going to provide some tips and tricks that are across the board relevant. And so I'm going to start with a production horror story. I was doing a shoot about a month ago. By the way, every production horror story that I can tell ends with me being a moron. I had this shoot to do for the Sprinter and the Coaster, the North County Transit District. The Sprinter is the train that goes from Escondido to Oceanside. The Coaster goes from Oceanside to San Diego. I had on-camera talent from Fox 5 that I had to include, and I had to work it into his schedule. He got off work at 9 a.m. He had to be back to the station at 4:30. I spent a day going out and getting B-roll on the trains and figuring out their schedules, and I figured out that the trains stop in Escondido for about 20 minutes. And so I figured out the plan is to pick him up in Kearny Mesa at Fox 5, have all the equipment loaded into the vehicle. I have a couple assistants helping. We drive to Escondido. We get everything next to the train. When the train pulls in, we move the cart of equipment onto the train. We get one shot, and then we get into the train and carry on. We get all of these shots as the train are moving so that when we get to Oceanside, we get off the train, jump onto the coaster, and go from there. The whole day was scheduled around that. So we pick him up, we drive up to Escondido, we get the cart of equipment off. I set up a shot next to the train where he's gonna say two lines, and then we're gonna pull all the equipment in and jump on the train and leave. And my assistants move the cart of equipment onto the train, and we set up our shot. And the train pulls in, and so I adjust the camera for the best shot. And we roll camera, and I do a little dolly move, and he says his line, and it's nice, but it's not great. I ask him to do it one more time. I start the camera move. The train goes beep, beep. And I pull the camera back, and I go, and action. And he says his line, and the train starts driving away. And it's a beautiful shot. If you see the commercial, you see him standing there, and he says, save time. Lose the stress, and listen to this, and the train is pulling out behind him, and it's a beautiful shot. The problem is we weren't on the train, and our equipment was. So the client had to get in her car and drive to Oceanside and pull the equipment off the train. We had to sit in Escondido and wait 28 minutes for the next train, and then chase our schedule the entire rest of the way. There are two other production horror stories involved in that same shoot, but I'll get to those later. I am the new president of San Diego MCAI. Like us on Facebook, we're San Diego Media Pros. We are also on Twitter and the web at sdmediapros.org. We'd like to thank our sponsors, and I have a personal reason for thanking the folks at Video Gear. If you've been to Video Gear, you've been in and seen that they're an enormous equipment store. I don't see them that way. When I go in there, generally I have some sort of issue that I need help with. And their staff are a tremendous resource for solving problems. And not just how to connect this cable to that cable, but what kind of lights to use on a shoot. How am I going to get lights on a train and use them when I'm not going to have reliable power? How am I going to do color correction things for windows and lights? Their folks know an enormous amount about filmmaking and video and not just the nuts and bolts of it, but the art of it as well. And so that's how I use their folks. Yes, I want you to go in and buy stuff, but get to know these people. They're a valuable resource for your company. Yay, Video Gear. And Martin Banks right there. So in addition to doing by the way, we are starting each meeting with a production horror story. We're also doing tips and tricks. If you have production horror stories or tips and tricks, please send them to president@sdmcai.org so that I can share your misery or your knowledge to the rest of the group. The tips and tricks that we're going to do are a broad range of things. We want to make these meetings as relevant to the widest group of professionals as possible. So I'm going to blow through some tips and tricks here. And they're on a bunch of different topics. Creativity. Before you start writing a script, write a complete to-do list of all your other responsibilities. Get them out of your head. Having them written down will relieve some of the weight they have over you, and you can free up your subconscious to concentrate on writing. Producing. When working out a production agreement with a client, include a schedule for their responsibilities as well. Include a provision where if they are late on delivering elements, your due dates move back as well. I've had a number of times where that's bitten me. Directing. Let the talent try one take their way, then provide direction. If you hate it, fine, you can do it again. But what happens if their take is brilliant? What happens if what they come up with is better than what you imagined? And that happens. Cinematography. When shooting a green screen, look at the image on the histogram and try to make the bar as narrow and flat as possible on the histogram. Then adjust the aperture so the bar is at 60%. That's how I like to do it, a little bit brighter than normal, a little bit brighter than average. And then light the talent to match that exposure so that your green screen is lit at the best possible key, and then you're lighting the talent to match the background you're putting them over. Equipment. When you're thinking about equipment purchases, go to Video Gear and prep equipment. If you're thinking about working with a camera, if you're thinking about purchasing a camera, look at the camera and spend some time with it and see how it feels in your hands and where the knobs are and whether it will work with the way your brain works. Editing. Once your edit is complete, close your eyes and listen to the edit and watch the rhythm of the cut. So you're closing your eyes and you're just leaning into the screen and seeing the light. And what that does is it tunes you into the music of the edit. It tunes you into the flow and ebb and making sure that the story is being told in a way that is visually musical as well. Also, this is a little extra editing tip. Own a spare keyboard and mouse, because when your keyboard, when you spill something into your keyboard, it's really, really good to have something right there, because you're only going to spill something into your keyboard with your client next to you. That's the way it's going to happen. Compositing. When rendering in After Effects, if you're rendering with an alpha channel, make sure your composition's background color is black. If it isn't, it will affect the semi-transparent areas of your key. I found that out because I had a blue background, and so anywhere anything was a little transparent, it was tinted yellow, because it's opposite of blue. Voiceover. When putting an online reel together, provide your bread and butter reads up front, and understand that many producers may click away after a minute, but continue to give examples of everything you can. I've hired people for their sarcastic read, which was a minute into their demo. Composing. Depending on how good the director and producer are, gauge what level to share music with them. If you think they can judge a finished track from a rough mix, let them in early in the process so you're sure you're headed in the right direction. If they have no ability to imagine at all, give them the finished piece and budget their lack of imagination into the bid. Legal. Don't pull stuff from the internet. Just don't. You wouldn't want people pulling your stuff down and using it for their profit. If you need a shot of Rome, buy stock footage or increase your budget, even if you have a client sign a form that may not clear you from liability. If you have tips or tricks or production horror stories, send them to me, president@sdmcai.org. We have a special door prize at this meeting. And Fred Ashman is not here, is he? Okay. We will give away 2 prizes in his absence anyway. The prizes are Tickets to Make a Living in Production, a 2-day seminar presented by Fred Ashman, a titan of our local production community and owner of Multi-Image Productions. Multi-Image has been around, I think they may be the longest tenured production company in San Diego. The seminar is an intensive, fast-paced, interactive event for those serious about a career in the production business, sharing the most successful techniques and how to avoid the mistakes learned the hard way. It's a $235 value. It's aimed at professional producers and directors and talent, and how to teach them how to get those bigger jobs, to get in front of people and pitch and audition and do things better. So let's do a drawing for our 2 tickets to Make a Living in Production. Let's have one of our guests.
I have a.
Darn it.
I don't. Yeah.
And the winning number is 69549. Drum roll, 4.
Anybody?
Must be present to win.
Nobody? Mark Schultz, yay! I don't have anything to give you, Mark. Okay.
But it's been documented that you're your
And we have one more, Reagan.
Oh, you're going to do it now. Sorry.
Yes. Wow.
You want to draw?
I'll draw. I'm closing my eyes. 695454.
You got it? All right.
Congratulations, Martin. I will give you a hug. The tips and tricks will be in the follow-up email after this meeting, and they'll also be on the website. And please, please, please send me your tips and tricks and your production horror stories, because I don't want to have to make these up all year long. And now I'm going to introduce Brent Altamar, who's going to introduce our meeting.
Thank you, Mike. All right, so I'm Brent Altamar. I'm the owner and executive producer of Groovy Like a Movie, and pitching is the bane of my existence. I have been in this business for 12 years as a business owner, and before that, 5 years working for another company, and I have never liked pitching. I don't enjoy doing it. It ranks right up there with doing budgets, which of course pitching is the first step before you can get to do the budgets. So they are necessary evils in our business, and they are very, very hard to do well, which is why we thought this would be a good topic to cover. So tonight we have 3 speakers. We have Mr. Michael LaFata, who is the multimedia producer at Illumina, and he has been in this industry for quite some time. He's worked on both sides of the pitch, both on the agency side, and then also, I guess there's 3 sides. I guess you've worked on the agency side, you've worked as a producer, and then also worked for corporate receiving pitches. So Mike is sort of uniquely qualified to talk with us about pitching on the corporate side and what it means to kind of be a good pitch, a good pitcher on the corporate side. I don't know. There's some pitcher-catcher joke in there, and I'm just not going to go there.
I'll go there.
And then we also have Brett and Jed Wynn, collectively known as the Brothers Wynn, who also run Titan Arts. Brett and Jed have been, for a number of years now, working towards being entertainment giants. Is that a fair statement?
We'll go with that.
All right.
I accept.
And they've been pitching their heads off now and are starting to have some really, really cool successes. And so they're going to talk about pitching on the entertainment side, which is maybe something that we don't get an opportunity to do. But I think it's a super critical part of our business, and I think all of us in here would be thrilled if we could be making our living, making television shows and feature films and things like that. So So we're going to start off with Mike. And Mike, go ahead and take it away.
All right. Maybe standing, sitting?
Whatever you want to do.
All right. I'll sit for now. So my name is Mike LaFata, and I am the multimedia producer at Illumina, which is a biotech company here in San Diego. Like Brent said, I originally went to art school, and I came from the television background, working in local television stations and in that background, and I bounced around the country doing that for a while. And then after that, I went out and started doing freelance, where I was working for advertising agencies and PR firms. And I actually pitched to the same company that I work for now. So I've been on both sides of the table, literally the same table, right? And so we pitched everything. Then after that, I started working for a couple different corporate clients for WebSense in Town, which is a security company, and then now Illumina. Illumina makes genetic sequencing machines, and so we sequence the human genome, and we sell to labs that do research labs, to medical labs that are want to find out if you have a certain gene for a certain cancer or Parkinson's disease. We sell to forensic labs that are doing it for crime scenes, and then we sometimes we to odd agencies like Ancestry.com. So you can go to Ancestry.com now and get your genome sequenced and find out, if you're adopted or something, you can find out, it's so specific that you can find out, I came from a little village in the south of France, and with a 98% likelihood of that. So, let me go back to my notes. And so what kind of projects do we work on in this corporate world? It's certainly not as sexy as the projects that you guys are working on with the TV shows, but it's a lot of work. I was surprised by how much work that corporations do. Sometimes there's sales videos showing a certain product, and you want to show all the different features of that product. Sometimes they are customer testimonials where you're saying, what a great product this is and why you use this. Sometimes it's interviews with the CEO or people who make the products. There's HR videos, saying for recruiting, why do you want to work for this company? We're a great company, and we have a great culture, that kind of thing. For trade shows, in the background of different kinds of trade shows, and then events where sales meetings and stuff like that. And then explainer type videos where we're trying to wrap up what our company does in just a couple of minutes, so that which is basically a pitch in itself. Like how do we pitch ourselves to other companies or potential clients? So what am I looking for when you come to pitch a video, or just sometimes it's not a specific video, or sometimes it's just like I want to work for you. So what am I expecting? I want to know that you've done your homework, that you checked out my company, and it seems like it's a no-brainer that you would do that. But you'd be surprised by how many people who have not looked at my website, not looked us up on anything else, and have no idea what we do. And it's like a sure way. We're going to shut down right away, and I'm not going to want to listen to what you're saying after that if I feel like you haven't even done a little bit of homework on who we are. Every company now has a YouTube page, and so check out the YouTube page and see the kind of videos that we've done in the past, and get a sense of the kind of work that we do. Some of these videos may not be on the YouTube page, so feel free, if you can have a little interview with the person beforehand, whether it's on the phone or email, and ask them a few things, and can you send me a couple things? Can you send me some of the videos that you've done before? What did you like about those? What didn't you like? How's this project going to be different than other ones? And another surprising thing that you may want to ask for is brand guidelines. Different companies have a style guide usually on how you use a logo and what to do, what not to do. But some of them are as specific as saying what kind of photography they want you to use, what kind of lighting, what kind of models they want you to use, how to light the background. I know we don't like to have any kind of unnatural colors. We want it to be as realistic and as possible in the background. And then you also may want to ask them, are there any sacred cows with the company? We have a very certain way that we want to have the logo portrayed, and we have a very certain way that other graphic elements. And I've tried to pitch this to have them change it before I started working there and realized that it was a dead end, and I think Brent's done the same when we've hired for him. You know, you want to be, we have a much cooler way of doing this, and no, it's a very sacred cow. Don't touch that. And so a lot of times just by going by the brand guidelines, you can find out, not to go there. So what kind of work do I want to see from you when you're pitching me? Well, I want to see big name clients, of course, someone that's bigger than me. Something that has a bigger scope than what I'm asking you to do too. Because I want to know if you can handle a Super Bowl commercial for Coca-Cola, then you can handle my project, right? Another big thing for us is we want to know that you have scalability. Coming from the production side and then going to the corporate side, it's a totally different way of thinking. And I mean, I understand what goes into a production, but my boss doesn't. And most people in my position will not know kind of the how much goes into a production, how much a change will cost in time and money and in resources. But I do know that my boss, the CEO, is going to wait till the last minute to ask for this, or someone else is not even going to look at it until the last minute. So I want to know at the very end, can you bring in resources to, but they are willing to throw money at fixing the problem, right? So can you bring in extra people? If you're pitching to a smaller company, a startup, sell yourself on being, we can do it for less because we're lean and we're mean. On a big corporate, you want to say, we have the resources to do anything you need. We are ready, no matter what. And so it's a different way of thinking on the kind of company that you're pitching to. Then I want to know what separates you, of course, from other people that are doing what you do. And if you can show me work that you've done that met all the requirements but is a little bit different. It's a different way of looking at it. But anything you can do to differentiate yourself. So after you show me all the big client stuff, I want you to show me, well, basically me, like something that's as close to the project that I'm working on as you can. I've asked companies to do record presentations, and that has its own kind of limitations. The lighting's not going to be ideal. This is someone at a resort or something giving a presentation or at a trade show. The lighting's not going to be good. The sound may be an issue, and the people that are presenting are not actors and they're not professional media people. So you have to deal with a lot of different things. And so, also in general, I want to know that I can then trust you as a person that you're going to make me look good, and that I don't have to worry about those things. So this may not be something, I've asked Brent to do this before. I said, can you show me something like this? Well, it's not really our sexiest work. It's not something we necessarily would put on our demo. That's okay. I want to see something that's close to the project that I'm working on, so I can trust you. So I know, okay, you guys are great at doing music videos, or you guys are doing great at this, but are you going to be okay with doing this specific kind of work? Because there are different kinds of mindsets. Then when you actually do pitch, customize it as much as you can. Show me that you thought about me as a client and that it's very specific. I don't want to see the general pitch that you give to everybody. If you can build your demo reels in a way that is modular at all, like if I'm pitching to the Padres, I'm going to put more sports stuff in there. I can change it around. I don't have one general reel. You want to have, if you're going to be doing stuff for a corporate client, I want to put more stuff that's talking heads and CEOs and stuff like that. Stuff that's not going to get you a job doing something for the Padres, but it's going to get you something to do for a corporate client. Again, back to showing me things that look like me. If I'm a biotech company, I want to see other biotech stuff. If I'm a telecom community, telecom place. I want to see other telecoms. And so another thing on your reel, if you can customize it all, if you can put something with the company's logo in it, it just means, whoa, that'll blow away a client, frankly. If you can just put just a little animation, your thing is so modular that you have like a 2-second thing, special presentation from company X to Illumina. I'm gonna be impressed by that you thought about me and that you have a specific thing for me as a client. Another thing I wanted to mention was too, even if you've worked for this company before, don't get lazy, because we were just talking about this today. It's like a certain company that we had, an advertising agency that we hire all the time, and they just kind of phoned it in when they did their presentation. And my boss told them, I said, you guys have done great things for us, but you guys were not as prepared on this job as you have been on other things. And frankly, if this were a new job, we wouldn't have hired you. And so don't get lazy, don't get soft. We want you to be comfortable with us, but don't get too comfortable. But really, the main thing I wanted to talk about is because most people in my position don't have a production background, we're nervous. We're going to be. We want to know that you're going to make us look good. There's lots and lots of layers in a corporation. My boss has another boss, has another boss, has another boss. When I worked on productions, it was always small groups, even at a television station, even at a network, and it's different in the corporate world. So if I'm hiring you for the first time, I'm putting my butt on the line, and so I want to make sure you're going to make me look good to my boss and to their boss and to their boss. And so convince the client that hey, we've got this all covered, and we're going to make you look good, and you have nothing to worry about. So yeah, that's the biggest thing with the corporate clients, is letting them know that I can trust you. I can put my trust in you to make me look good. And that's about it.
Did something.
There we go. Cool. Thank you, Mike. So what we're going to do, I've neglected to mention at the beginning, we're going to do Q&A kind of at the end. So if you do have questions, hang on to them, and then we'll do a little Q&A session at the end. All right. So we'll pass it on to Brett and Jed to talk about the entertainment side.
First off, we like to stand up and we like to be loud, so a little bit different there.
This is levels.
Yeah, exactly.
This is for you guys. We also don't like taking notes.
So these are what he's handing out is just basically bullet points in case you want to be reminded of what we were talking about, and you don't want to take quite as furious a note as you might otherwise. Just note down the things that are important to you.
And if you don't like it, the trash can's right over there by the food.
Well, and there's recycling. That's even better.
Recycling
Yeah.
over somewhere else.
We should give you some background because you've probably never heard of us. So where are our credentials for pitching to you on pitch or presenting to you on pitching? It was back in the spring of 2011. I found myself on a road trip. I was out on the East Coast, and I called up Jed and I said, Jed, I'm going to be out here for a little while. Why don't you put together a demo, basically a short trailer for the documentary we're working on? I said, I'll just go to all these nonfiction channels because a bunch of them are out there in Maryland and in Virginia and in New York. I said, I'm going to be out here for a little while. Why don't you just put together the best thing you can, and I will beat down some doors.
He was sleeping in his car.
I was sleeping in my car. Brent says he hates pitching with good cause. There are some unfun aspects to pitching, but there are some exciting, interesting ones too. The fascinating thing to me was that, well, I should say Jed produced this dynamite, what I think is still a dynamite trailer for the project, or a dynamite presentation. And I took it to these different places, and this is no exaggeration, cold calling. They didn't know my name. They didn't know who I was. I cold called these people. I said, here's the website link. Let me send it to you. I met with, during the short period that I was on the East Coast, I met with 12 different executives from 12 networks, almost all of which you've heard of. And everybody I met with was a director or higher, a director or a vice president of development or of production at that particular network.
When you said here's the link to my video, I mean, did you get that appointment with them that day?
I gave it to them as quickly as they would take it.
I mean, oh
I usually got email from them and then send it to them. Yeah, because it's reading a URL to somebody over the phone is no fun for anyone. You know, one missed key. Yeah, you would get it back to, or text it to them however they wanted it. But essentially, we took this giant step, or what felt like a scary step, and it yielded great results in terms of new contacts, in terms of opportunities to pitch. So it's from that and from some other experiences that we've had that we put together the list that we're about to give you.
Yeah, and the main point of this story is, no, none of you have the contacts to pitch probably, neither do we, and nobody really has like the insight, and neither did we, and nobody has anything, you just have to go do it. I mean, that's the bottom line.
They will not come to your door.
Find a show that you like on television, find the production company that makes that show, look up who the VP is or hire on their website and call them. That's it. That's what you do.
Yep.
So, on to the rules. The brothers win 26 rules for pitching and negotiating because until you have paperwork signed, you're still pitching. Negotiating is part of the pitching process. I mean, it really is. It goes all the way through. Your idea is not in cement until it is on film. Bottom line. Okay, anyway, rule number 1, there are no rules. And anyone who says that there are rules is just talking through their own limited experience. This is the truth. Nobody knows what all the tactics are to try and get your pitch done. Anything can work.
And
Absolutely anything.
People would have told you that the way I did it on the East Coast is the wrong way.
People did tell us that the way we did it on the East Coast was the wrong way. Multiple, before and after.
But it's proof that pitching is pitching is pitching, and there is no wrong way. Any way can work if the material providing is good.
Absolutely.
The number 2, also highlighted by the story I just told, is talk to the higher ups. Generally, your introductory contact will be somebody who's low level and probably in development if you do manage to get contact. Work your way up. Find a way to find out that other person's name and call them and say, oh, I was talking to so-and-so about, this one project and your name came up and I just wanted you to have a chance to see this presentation that we've done, etc.
And guess email addresses. That's a lot of fun too. You email the lower person and you figure out how their naming convention for their company, and then email the higher guy. And just like, hey, here it is. This is coming to your desk because you're expecting it. You know what I mean?
I mean, it seems obvious to say, but when you go to people that are higher up in the decision-making process, the higher you can go, the less bureaucracy there's going to be, the less extra input there is. I mean, you don't think about this, but when you go into a production company or even a network and you talk to somebody who's in development and you say, hey, I've got this great idea, guess what? You're doing their job.
This happened to us. We were at a network, or at a production company in LA. We're sitting down for a meeting. They were looking at us as talent for one of the shows they were doing. And we're like, okay, let's talk, what do we, and we said, hey, we have ideas. And I kid you not, the words out of their mouth were, why do we need your ideas? We have ideas. That's exactly what they said to us across the table. And so then we're like, okay, back down a little bit, let's talk about this. And then we told them what we were gonna go do, after we were done with them, and started telling them some of our ideas anyway. And they were hooked. They're like, do you have any more ideas? And we went back and met with them a couple more times based on that, So the lower level people see you as direct competition if you're coming in with ideas, right? That's why you want to avoid them like the plague.
The next, rule number 3, it says characters that pop. All right, just so you know, this mostly is affected by nonfiction television, but if you didn't go to WestDoc, you haven't been to Real Screens or any one of these giant nonfiction television conventions that they have, what you need to understand is, this is the way I summarize it. They're looking, when they say characters that pop, they're looking for like swamp people types. They're looking for, what is it called? Duck Dynasty. They're looking, Honey Boo Boo. That's exactly what they're looking for, bigger, louder, dumber.
That is the fad.
That's what that is what they're looking for. Now let me just say one other thing. They don't know what they're really looking for until they actually see it.
So you start pitching your show, and they start going, this is swamp people. And you go, yes, this is swamp people. You go right along. Your show is swamp people for all intents and purposes until you start making the show. If they want to believe it's swamp people, fine,
I mean, you don't agree with them. Don't say, yeah, our show is swamp, but let them believe it as long as they need to believe it.
To get more of the show in front of them.
That's right.
Exactly. That's the, and this kind of comes to the one-track mind thing. There's this one producer that we've worked with several times, and she's got us pigeonholed in this one particular kind of idea. These guys do this.
We're only
you know?
good for one
We're
thing
only
in her
good for the
mind.
one thing. And every time one of those things pops up, she calls us. But that's all we really do. We've pitched her on tons of other stuff. But she just can't wrap her head around that, you know? And so a lot of these people that you're working with, and I'm talking about the higher up kinds, the VPs of development and production, they've got swamp people on the brain. That's what the other networks are doing. They're making money, so that's what we're doing. And you come in with an idea, and if they equate that to swamp people, let them roll with that idea.
He keeps
until-
saying swamp people, but he also means
yeah,
Pawn Stars
and whatever else there is
yeah,
out there.
everything
Right,
else that's out there.
exactly. It's not all swamps, but
One other thing that you need to know is, from our limited experience in pitching to television, if you have this really burning, deep desire to make something that is your artistic vision, it's like your baby, you need to make a film.
Yeah.
Because, and the reason I'm telling you this is because you're going to have a way easier time having it look like you in the end, right? Having your baby appear like you want it to appear. Because you take it to these other places, television has lots of hands. It goes through across lots of desks, and you will see, and there's way less flexibility. If you go out and make an amazing film, guess what? Somebody's going to watch it and say, "That's an amazing film. Let's help you sell this thing," right? You go in with an amazing television show idea, and you know what they're going to do? They're going to say, "Oh, but it needs this."
everyone has to put their rubber stamp on it to justify their job,
Yeah,
right?
it validates them.
Yeah,
as
it
employees.
validates their employment by saying, but we got to add this. It is, yeah, if you like, television is big bureaucracy, bottom line. That's what it is. Get used to it and realize that, the project that you started with is not going to be the project that gets produced at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Unless you do it in film.
Unless you do it in
which case
film.
you probably have that
Well,
flexibility.
you have a better chance.
Better chance, exactly. Rule number 5 is it says find out who wears the pants. It sounds odd, but it's actually useful in almost all aspects of business. It's this idea.
It's an antiquated sexist statement, really. Okay.
But essentially,
it applies to what we're talking about. So
it's this idea that you can gauge who the deal means more to with one simple thing, and that is who's doing the follow-up contacting.
the person in charge is never following
follow-up.
up. Ever.
If they want you, they'll be calling you. If you have to call them,
It's over.
yeah, you're not in the power position in that relationship. Does that make sense? It sounds
This is important.
simple.
This is important for part 2 negotiation.
Yeah,
Okay,
definitely important.
When you start pitching and you're handing the idea out to people, if they're coming at you, you've got a good thing going. You've got a good situation. Things in this industry. I don't know if this is this section or not, but I'm gonna say it right now.
That's right.
Things in this industry go fast. When somebody really wants something to happen, it's like it clips. Okay, when you're getting really close to producing that pilot, things are going to start going at light speed. If it's been a month and they haven't gotten you the paperwork yet, it's over. You know.
Story time. I called Ashley. I said, "Hey, can we meet with you?" She said, "Yeah." I changed her name. That's not her real name. We met with Ashley. We pitched her on a bunch of ideas. She said, "We want to sign you guys across the board, right?" Great. I said, "Send us the paperwork after our pitch meeting." And she goes, "Okay." And then 6 months later, nothing's happened. And I'm on the phone with Ashley saying, "Hey, Ashley, what happened to that paperwork?" And she said, "Oh, the person that was supposed to send it to you got fired. Yeah, we'll get it to you. No, this is a real story. This is not
It's
true.
right
This
before
is
real
true."
screens. Yeah.
So I call her and I say, "Oh, well, okay, send us the paperwork." And so another 6 months goes by. And then I happen to see her in person, and I'm like, "Hey, and I didn't
How
even
about that
mention
paperwork?
it came, I didn't even have to mention it. She goes, "Oh yeah, well, just been really busy," kind of thing. And then this magical thing happened. A network saw something that we'd put together, took the smallest amount of interest in it, and guess what happened?
Paperwork.
Yeah, she was on the phone in
The next day.
probably 3 minutes after they expressed interest. But the whole point is we negotiated back and forth with them. We send them the contract. The contract is back and on our desk with their signature on it in under 3 hours. Right? Moral of the story is if things are dragging, if it's going slow, that's your biggest indication that you maybe need to have a few more other irons in the fire. Does that make sense?
And there's no sweetheart relationship thing here. It's the weirdest thing dealing with Hollywood people, because every time you see them, they love you to death. When you talk about money, they like curse and swear at you constantly. But whenever you see them, they're like, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" So we had this one situation where we were working with one producer at this one production company, and we go over and work with this other producer at this other production company, and then production company 3 hires both of those producers, and we end up talking with them there. Right? And so these two producers are like, "Oh, remember when you were meeting with them and then you came over to meet with and you guys are playing the field or whatever." They didn't care, and nobody does. Don't think just because you pitched your idea to somebody that you should give it time to wait and sit on their doorstep. It's not the way the business works. You pitch something to somebody, and then you pitch it to the other guy and the other guy and the other guy. And if this guy moves, then this guy comes back like 3 months later and say, "Sorry, man, I'm going with him." Yep. Too late. So sorry.
We strayed a little bit. Number 6, really quickly, is breaking down the door. We mentioned it with as far as our documentary trailer when I went out to the East Coast. Have the very best demo you can.
Now, this is not a demo reel.
Right.
And it's very important that you understand that. Do not give them clips of stuff that you've done. It's unlike corporate everything. The demo reel that you're handing them they call it a sizzle reel or a taster reel, okay? And taster reels are your idea boiled down to like a long form commercial. So a new show's coming out on Discovery, all right? You watch those commercials. It's about a minute long, 30 seconds, a minute long. Now imagine that doubled, okay? Maybe, if you really, really got good stuff, tripled, maybe 3 minutes at your max, and that's your sizzle reel, okay? It's max. I wouldn't even go that far, man. I would keep it down to 2.
You can say it in fewer words or fewer minutes in video when you're doing a pitch. Their attention span is like the least attentive 3-year-old you've ever met. So just boil it down.
Handing a executive, a VP of development, a 5-minute demo reel is like asking them to watch Lord of the Rings, Return of the King extended cut.
Right.
That's what you're asking
Right.
for when you do that. Okay.
On a busy day, they're not even going to be paying
It's
attention.
not going to happen. And how many times on the East Coast were you showing them a 2-minute trailer and they would start talking to you in the middle of the trailer? They
Almost
wouldn't watch
all
it.
of my even 2 minutes and 6 seconds occasionally
much.
got segmented, and it was a dynamic, really good 2 minutes and 6 seconds. But sometimes they just can't help themselves, even if it's good. They're like, "Oh, tell me more about this," and you're like, "Wait till the thing
They
is
have the
done."
attention span of a gnat.
Yeah.
But you never show this to them unless you're face to face, right? You never.
No, that's
got
that's
us in
what
the
we're
door.
getting to. When I was out on the East Coast, when I took this trailer out that I showed to all these different people, I'd cold call them, but I will give you the name of one of the places I called. I called National Geographic because it was a pretty good fit with them. I called them up and I cold called this guy and I said, "Hey, check out my reel," and he was so standoffish. He was just he wanted to put me off. He was like, "Yeah, well, send me a link, and if I think it's any good, I'll maybe get back to you or whatever." And it literally like that, just as nonchalant about it as he could possibly be. But it was fascinating because the material was a lot better than he expected. Because I'm not joking, it was less than 90 seconds after it was less than, I calculated it. It was the amount of time it took to watch the video plus 90 seconds, and he was on the phone with me again.
It's
the best comeuppance story ever because he
It
called
is.
me and he said, "Hey, can you meet, tomorrow at say 10 a.m.?" And it was it was a great comeuppance story because I got to say, "Yeah, I'd love to, but I'm actually meeting with Discovery at that exact time."
And it was true.
And it was true.
Yeah.
I didn't even have to lie. I said, "I'm sorry. Can we do it later? Because you're not the only game in town," which felt really good. So
We meet earlier than Discovery.
that's right.
No, but so that's the process. Cold call here, and that's saying, "Here comes my stuff." Delivery of the goods via email or whatever, what have you, and then that's hopefully your hook.
It's legwork, but that's breaking down the door if you don't already know people that are in it. Next one.
Okay, so have lots and lots of backups. When you walk into a pitch, remember, your idea is not going to end up your idea anyway, so have other ideas to throw around. You're going to go in there and you're going to start talking about one thing, and then you're going to be like, "Oh, no, we don't do that," kind of thing there.
A shout out to Brent. We were co-pitching something with him a couple years back, and we were really inexperienced. I mean, we still kind of are, but we were really inexperienced back then. We were like, "Brent, so how many of these, are they gonna, maybe be interested?" I think he said,
What was the
it's
number?
usually like 4 out of 100 was I think the.
Yeah.
Yeah, something. 1 out of every 2,500 gets made.
Oh, okay.
Right. But the ones they actually start talking to you about, it's really
Yeah, it's a small percentage. You have to kind of go in there with a quiver full in order to hit your mark at any point because, hey, they're all looking for different things. They've all got different demographics. That should make perfect sense.
It's also important that you realize when you go into this pitch meeting, they've already seen your demo stuff, okay? Because you've sent it to them. Don't go in with anything. Go in with just, this is me. Let's talk, you know? Blast them, dazzle them with your BS. You know, whatever you need to do, you sit there and just talk because they want to get a feel for you. You know, I'm into this, let's do this, I'm excited, let's go, whatever. And then they're going to change the idea. Well, we like this, but what about this? Oh yeah, let's put a spin on it, make it more like Mythbusters and, you know, Fear Factor all at the same time. You know, whatever ends up happening in that meeting is fine. Then what you do is, and you want to have lots of ideas to throw at them. Then what you do is you have a treatment, right, which is your write-up of the, you know, what the show's going to be like. It's kind of like the modus operandi of the show. Usually like a page, 2 pages at the well, no, it's more than 2 pages.
Depends
It
on
can
how
be
much you're
big. It
including.
depends on who's writing the treatment. You can have a 1-pager, you can have like 10-pager. It just depends on what kind of junk you put in there. So anyway, you write up this treatment and you modify it, just like we were talking about modifying your demo reel. Thank you very much, Mike. Modify your treatment, modify your pitch. Then you deliver them the hard copy
Yeah.
goods.
Don't give it at the first sit down.
Yeah, never
Wait
just
till
walk
you've
in with the-
been able to interact with them and you know what they're looking for so you can tailor it to meet what they
Do not
really
have a
want.
laminated pamphlet upon entrance. That
right.
goes in the mail, right? Definitely in the mail. Plus it gives you an excuse to follow up, which is a good
Don't
thing.
leave behind. You don't leave-
Don't ever, on your
I don't
first
leave anything
meeting,
behind.
don't ever leave
Yeah.
anything behind because it always gives you an excuse to talk
Wipe
to
down
them
for
later.
prints in case the police come because you
Exactly.
no evidence you were there.
This is Hollywood. So, okay, then we talked about these things just take time. We already kind of went over
We
that.
covered that. That was the
It
story
goes
of,
fast.
you know,
it'll go fast.
It'll go
right.
quickly.
No means no until no means yes, essentially. Okay?
That's rule number 9.
Yeah, and
if you're
this
following
is,
along.
This is the rule of Hollywood musical chairs. Everybody there, and I kid you not, we know a handful of people in this industry, and every single one of them is at a different place now.
Exactly. I know people that used to be at Science that are now at Discovery. I know this one woman who, it'll come up in just a minute, but who used to be at Planet Green and now she's at VH1. I mean, it is a giant game of musical chairs, and it's probably every 6 to 18 months, at least in
Yeah.
nonfiction television. Fictional may be more stable, but nonfiction
Right.
is dog eat dog, and they're just.
They're moving all the time.
Yeah.
They go from one place to the other place to the other place like you would not believe.
So you can pitch with relatively rapid succession comparatively, even to the same networks sometimes. 6 months later, if you're on the ball and you follow up, you can be repitching something that is the same or a very similar idea
2 years ago, we
to
pitched,
someone else.
2 years ago, we pitched a concept. It ran through the network channels. Okay, we did it to everybody, right? It is now 2 years later. We did not do this pitch. This pitch came from somebody we knew 2 years ago. Comes up and says, "Hey, this network's interested in that show we were talking about 2 years ago. Let's do it." Really? I think that's the story behind Dirty Jobs too.
Yeah, same.
Dirty Jobs is the exact same story.
Yep.
Not that we're Dirty Jobs, but it really actually does happen. You pitch something 2 years later, man, pitch the same thing again. If you're going to go through the money to make the demo reel, send that bad boy around the circuit again. New people are looking at it.
That's right.
So yeah, don't assume that things stay the same there. So if
Okay.
you get a no, you can get a yes later.
Rule number 10 is important. If you have your own production company, you have aspirations of making your own thing with your own people. That's why we called it partner with the enemy, right? Meaning that's your first time out. You're going to have a very, very difficult time. For example, when I was meeting with the Smithsonian Channel out on the East Coast, they looked at me, and they were one of the few networks that looked at me and were really honest and blatantly honest right up front. They said, look, unless you have somebody working on your team that we've heard of, you don't have a prayer of signing a deal with us, which is fine.
That being said, if you don't want to go with the partnering route, and this is just an aside, there
Aside
are
away.
places you can go to hire people that are showrunners,
Right.
professional showrunners. They'll come on, they'll sign on board your show for a percentage of the thing, and yeah, if it picks up, great, they'll do the work. They don't care. So you can go and hire a professional show. What's that website? I can't remember. Ask us
can't
later.
remember anyway.
Ask us later.
But anyhow, if you have aspirations of doing something,
5 minutes.
perfect. If you have aspirations of doing something on your own, just there's no shame in partnering with another bigger production company. Is actually what we're doing right now to try and get credibility with some of these networks.
Which brings
So-
us to our next point, make their people your people. Find out who their contacts are and become best friends with them, because then you can pitch around afterwards. You
Yeah.
can just go right over the top and
They'll
start
become
talking to them.
very motivated if they know you already know development people at different networks. all of a sudden all the production companies you partner with get a little bit paranoid.
The company we're working with right now actually put a clause into our contract that says you cannot pitch this idea to the other networks unless we're involved for X amount of time, because they know we can. They know we know the people, they know we've talked to the people, and it's just kind of funny to see. But that puts you in a great power position when you're negotiating with them, because now we got a great deal with these guys, because like, hey, if you don't want to do it with us, we'll just take it ourselves, and they know it.
End run and do it, yeah, do
Exactly.
it ourselves.
Nobody cares about your ideas or
Yeah.
about ideas at all. Ideas aren't the important thing when you're pitching a TV show. I have this great idea for a TV show. No, you don't. And it doesn't matter.
Because they've had it before.
They've
probably.
seen it before, or they will say they've seen it before.
You either have to have a super unique execution for it, that's something that only you can do, or you need to have signed talent, and that's the really quintessential part. People are paranoid about stuff getting stolen. Don't be paranoid, because all they have to do is change a moderate amount of things, and they can steal it, and it's not even really stealing, because they've probably already bounced that idea
They've probably
around.
produced that show
They
before.
probably have.
Yeah.
The whole point is you need something unique, something that they can't duplicate, and that usually comes down to talent or execution. So if you don't have something unique like that, you need to rethink your pitch.
And trust me, they're lazy. If they know you can do it, they will have you do it.
Yeah.
They will not kick you to the door because you're the new guy. In fact, they'd love to have you do it, because that's going to bring us to not the next point, but one that's a little farther down, which is they're going to try and take you to the cleaners doing it. So they want you to work for them. This is a good thing.
We got to bang through them
go
though,
faster.
because Number 13 is don't bury the lead. It comes from advertising, and it's like newspaper headlines. If the thing that's going to hook them, you need to say up front, right? If your pitch has a hook, it needs to be right out in the lead.
And shorter is better on the pitches, guys. Like we said, if it's 5 minutes, you're dead. Make it 2 minutes. Make it shorter. Especially if it's media. It's got to be short.
Yep.
Do not take 5 years to get to the point when you're telling people what the show is about. Start with your meat statement. It's this meets that. You've heard that before, right? It's like I said, Mythbusters meets Fear Factor. That's
Number
the show.
15, target the demographic, then shoot whatever moves. The reason we said that is because, look, you need to study up on them. You need to know what they do and what they're interested in, or have the best idea you can possibly get. But you know what? When I sat down with Planet Green, guess what they told me? Anything but green.
We will take any show that has nothing to do with green.
You definitely need something else in the chamber when they say anything but green sitting down with Planet Green.
Again, a good reason to have lots of ideas when you walk in the door.
Yeah, number 16, managers and agents can help you. You don't absolutely have to have one. The reason they're useful is because they know things like what are the industry standards for a particular type of deal.
How much you should be paid for having the idea and
That's
where
right.
that money comes from.
And they'll be able to get you in contact with established production companies. But if their vision isn't your vision, you need to dump them.
They will not do
They
good
won't help
for
you.
you. And if you don't have a manager or you don't have an agent, get a lawyer. When the paper comes to you on your end, the lawyer knows these things, not any lawyer, an entertainment lawyer. They will say, well, hey man, there's nothing in here that says you can audit their books. Oh yeah, let's put that in there.
put that in
you
there,
know, that was on our last one.
Number 17, be cautious or be poor, because the industry standard, I'm just going to read it to you. The industry standard is to put you through a grinder for your first and second show and then allow you to make some money after that, right? You need to be careful about what you sign and what you agree to right up front.
You can avoid it, which is, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. Number 18, I can't share the story for this because we don't have time. It says, like a bad dentist, sometimes you touch a nerve. I was in New York meeting with a VP of development, I won't say which one, sat down across the table from this VP of development and pitched several ideas, one of which was remarkably, I had no idea at the time.
No,
was
tell the
remarkably
story and we'll jam through the rest on that. No, seriously,
okay.
tell the story.
So
Sorry,
I'm
Brent,
sitting
you got to
across-
tell the story.
I'm sitting across the desk from this individual, and I don't even want to give gender because you'd narrow it really quickly, what with how many there are in New York. Anyway, the VP is sitting across the table, says, what else have you got? After my first pitch just is completely destroyed. And I said, well, I've got this, and I hit on the third one, and she was irate. Darn, I said she. She was irate about what I was pitching to her.
Lean over the table, strangle you.
No, I'm not, no exaggeration. She looked at me and said, you have no business being in this industry. You should quit right now. And she was dead serious. She was mad and dead serious. She's like, you have wasted my time. I said, I'm sorry, ma'am, I'll leave. I'm sorry for what
But then
having
she
wasted
wouldn't
my-"
let him
And then
leave.
she said, no, sit down. She was like some old battle axe English teacher who was
We
like,
know what her gender
no, I'm
is now,
gonna
by the
lay
way."
into you again. And then she scolded me for like another 5 minutes. I was like, I'm sorry. Just leave. And she
Let
goes,
me
sit
leave."
down. Okay. It turns out, this is the wonderful thing about hindsight. I was like, man, that woman is just mean. But hindsight is funny because the exact show that I pitched to her was a multi-million-dollar project that they had secretly going on right then. It came out like last year, and I laughed and I pointed Jed at it and I was like, look, this is exactly what I was pitching her. This is why she was so irate. She didn't want me to go to anybody else and say, oh, hey, you want to do this? Because it was exactly what they were doing.
They wanted to be the first one to pop out Swamp People for that.
But it wasn't Swamp.
It wasn't Swamp People. But you know what I mean. They wanted to be the first in that genre, and they were dumping tons of money on it.
Yeah, pretty
Okay.
funny. Okay,
Anyway,
we will.
so negotiation, and we're going to go really fast, and a lot of this is going to blur together, okay? So learn and selectively ignore industry standards, and I'm going to say this, they will hand you the contract, say, this is the way it is, and you get to say, but I want this.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if they say, this is the industry standard. And I'm going to kind of blur this into it. We're going to talk about the phone call, and all the next points, don't care about your baby and silence is golden and get it writing. It's all going to blur into this conversation. So we're talking with this production company, and they say, this is the industry standard, this is what you're going to get, this is the contract, and nobody does anything differently. We wrote what we wanted. We actually rewrote their contract and handed it back to them, and we took that thing to town. It was bad. It
was all red
It was
lines.
red lines everywhere, and then adding in stuff about us and us and us, and they did not like it. And so they basically said, pass, no deal. We're like, okay, whatever. And then the VP...
Well, that's important because that's number 20. If you care too much about it, you care too much about this project, you will get steamrollered in the process.
You will get taken to
If you
town.
don't, if you can even just convince yourself not to care just a little bit, it will help you worlds in negotiation.
Realize it's like Goldie Hawn. Goldie Hawn gets called into some executive's place, and he's like, "Hey, honey, show me a little leg." And she's like, "No, not gonna do it." He's like, "Well, you're never gonna make it this industry." And she's like, "It's not worth it." So she walks away, and then a couple years later, she's on Laugh-In, hugely popular. And she wrote the guy a note, saying, "I think I made it," that kind of a thing. It's not worth it. It is not worth getting steamrolled. Don't let it happen to you. Don't care so much about getting on television with the project that you totally shoot yourself in the foot doing it. So anyway, that's what this contract was. We rewrote the contract, we sent it back to him, and the president of the company says no. The VP says, well, let's try and work this out, so we all get on the phone together. And he spends an hour just ripping us up one side and down the other.
You're never going to get this. You're never
You are
going to
never
get
gonna
this.
get this,
You're
never
never
going to
gonna
get this. And I kid you not. So we're sitting there, and Brett's saying nothing. It's a conference call. And I know he's still on the line because I started the conference call. And I'm like, what do we... And so every now and then we're throwing in a, okay, all right. And so we decided before the phone call, we just weren't going to argue, and we're going to be nice, and we're not going to say anything, and we're going to stand our ground. We're like, that's the way it is. So anyway, he's done. We're like, well, hey, man, thanks really much. Thanks for calling. Really appreciate it. Great. Hang up the phone. We're like, that deal's dead. Yeah. And time to move on with our life. 2 days later, we get a contract from him in the email, out of the blue, with all the changes that we requested. Everything that we asked for.
All the big material points
we
were
would
in there,
never get in
reworded.
this industry.
Yep, you'll never get that.
Show up in that contract. And we're like, wow, silence is golden when you're negotiating. People can talk themselves out of anything. And as this guy was talking to us, he's got on one side Travel Channel going, we want the show, we want the show. And on the other side, he's got us, and we're like, we don't care, we don't care. And he's like, ugh! And so he just sent it. He couldn't handle it. Some money is better than no money. Which brings us to a very interesting point. We talked about contracts going both ways. Make sure your stuff's in it. We talked about getting things in writing. It's fiction until you actually have the paperwork in front of you.
An important point to note is it doesn't mean they're dishonest. Generally, people remember what they meant, not what they said. That's
Yeah.
why getting stuff in writing is so important.
Even an email is good, but make sure there's something written down so we can say, see what you said here? Anyway, Rule 24, there is no such thing as a burned bridge when money's on the table.
True.
And we discovered this. There are people that we've worked with that it just collapsed in flames, and we were like, well, we're never talking to them again. And then a year and a half later, hey guys, how you doing?
We're best friends
I haven't seen you in so
again."
long. Does not matter.
No.
Okay, but I will say this.
Because a cheap television show with a short series on satellite is in the millions of dollars, which
That's
is
correct.
why they can't afford to hate you if you have something they need.
No, if you've got something that can even get on a lower end cable network, that is a huge
a lot
bottom
of
line
money.
to any business, and they will not walk away from it. They love the money more than they hate you, is the bottom line. But you also need to remember, if a bridge burning happens, make sure that you are never mean, and make sure that you are, don't be afraid to be blunt, but just never be inappropriately, don't ever yell. We made it a rule never to yell at people when we're negotiating. They yell at us all the time.
Time heals
Never yell
all
back.
wounds, but money heals it faster.
Exactly. We talked about hiring a lawyer, so we're going to skip that and we're going to jump right to the last one, which was when all else fails, see rule number 1.
That's right.
I mean, really?
It's everybody's experience is different.
Like we said in the beginning, the
There's
big
no
thing
wrong way.
is get out there and start talking to people and start throwing your stuff in their face, and eventually something sticks to the wall. And it just depends on how tenacious you are and how much top ramen you want to eat between here and there. You know, that's the bottom
Your
line.
story will be totally different than anybody else's because they're just really, even though there are general ways, everybody's story to try and land a pitch is almost always fundamentally different. And that's what we have for you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Fine, sit in the middle.
All right, so we have a few minutes where we can do some Q&A. So does anybody have any questions? So yeah.
Question for each of you. First, Mike, how does somebody get into your world to talk to you, pitch their company to you?
You can, I mean, an email will work. I mean, even if I don't know you, if nice short email, send me a link, it's something that you've done, and I'll look at it, yeah.
So you would suggest just cold call the company and say who's in charge of doing your production, trying to get their name and then just go down.
Yeah, and corporate, you know, they're not protected. They will send you to the right person, yeah. Like, oh, the video person, yeah.
And for you guys, how do you go into a production company and pitch them on a new idea when all they want is another Swamp People or another fishing show or another?
Well, like we said, you got to have the two things, right? You got to have it's presented in a unique way, or you got something attached to it. Persons, places, something special that you've got that nobody else has got. So what you do is you walk in and, you, like we said, don't bury the lead. Give it to them in 5 seconds. It's blank meets blank, and here's the catch, and then spill it. And then they'll start talking, and they'll say, "No, not interested." You'll know that quick. We met with a company not long ago. They're kind of an Australian TV company, but you know they're making roots in LA, and they said, well, what have you, we walked in the door, hey, how you doing? Get glad handing, sit down, you want anything to drink? Great. What do you got? And we went, okay, number 1, bam. And they're like, that's good. And we talked about it for a bit. What else you got? Number 2, bam. They're like, move on, you know. And it just proceeded like that. And then we hit on one, you know, we went through all 4, and then they went back to the one that they liked, and we talked about that for about a half hour.
And don't be afraid, here's the thing, don't be afraid to take ideas that are smart, especially to production companies, because the honest truth is, same company he's talking about, we sat down with him, and one of their development leads was, I think he's a VP, but he said, hey, you know, I wish the stuff that was on satellite was different. We're kind of constrained to fit these molds because it's what they want. But the truth of it is, there are niche places, and at WestDoc in September, there were a couple people that I talked to who said, no, that's not at all what we're looking for. And so you just have to find, I think, the right people to fit it to, or be willing to tolerate metamorphosizing the idea temporarily until you can get it into a pre-pilot or a pilot situation where it's going to come out and they're going to say, we like it, you know, even though it doesn't fit the Honey Boo Boo model.
I'm steal it back. You want to get grab from me. There's a possibility of making multiple cuts too. For one of the projects that we did, we developed a taster reel, and we did one cut one way, and then we found out they wanted it different. We're like, forget it, another cut, and we reworked it to a different show.
A science-heavy cut, and we did a travel-heavy cut, and we, you know, just across the board for several different organizations.
And quick follow-up, have you guys found, if you had more success pitching to networks or pitching to production companies that already have the contacts with the networks?
Production companies.
They have the better in. I think we've had success both ways because we have had positive. The fact is, I don't think many of the production companies would hire us outright to do something unless, as he mentioned, we brought on like an experienced showrunner to complete the pitch.
You mean the networks? The
That's what I meant, the networks. The production companies is an easier route, and I think they're more readily available. But if you can get, I encourage you to get as many network contacts as you can. I mean, just like as many production company contacts as you can. So, yeah.
Hey, and real quick about that, the stat that you were talking about, I just looked it up on my notes. For every, it's like every 125 pitches to get a show made, and that's experienced production companies. They make 125 pitches to get a show on TV.
Yep.
So that reinforces the don't come with one because that's only one.
Question both groups, if you don't mind. Mike, how do you deal with marketing people? A few years ago, we went and pitched our concept and ideas to a marketing individual. We found right away that a lot of them weren't taking it up the chain because as soon as they took it to their boss would look at them and go, why didn't you think of this, or why weren't you doing that? Is that kind of comes back full circle to what you guys were saying about just kind of, do you just bypass them if you can, or do you go to as many people in that organization as possible so that somebody sees this and that they can then get together and say, let's hear what they have to say?
Yeah, I don't know from their side. I mean, to me, you know, as the person that's going to hire you eventually, if I found out you went to me and then you didn't get the answer you wanted to, and then you went to my boss, you know, no, you wouldn't. You would not get hired. But I mean, you could ask though when you're talking to me, hey, are there other people that may be interested in this that I can send this to? You know, or if you're emailing it, you know, you blast it to more than one person that way. But you know, I mean, in a corporate, it's a chain of command, and I would be offended if I said no and then you went over my head.
You know, I got a really interesting tip about the corporate world, kind of a sales, it's sort of related to pitching, but because one of the hard things you have to do in the corporate world is you sell against existing relationships, right? Most of these corporate guys, they already have existing relationships. So a tip that I got that was really interesting, and you have to be disciplined, but what you do is you look in the want ads, and you look for you look for a big company that starts hiring their marketing manager, right? And when you see that big company's hiring marketing manager, you put that in a folder. And in 6 months, you call that you call and you say, hey, can I talk to the marketing manager, please? And because that's a new person that's just been hired, they've had enough time to get their feet wet if you've waited 6 months, and they don't have any existing relationships. So anyway, there's sort of a way maybe around that. I know.
I wonder.
What do you see? Say you have everything together for a sizzle reel and all the content. What is an average cost to produce one? If you even have your own in-house editor or something, and then how elaborate do you make that off with graphics and things of that nature?
Are we talking indie, or are we talking like production company, like LA production company? 10 to 25,000 is the typical budget for a 3.
For one that's being sent up to a network, but
For
the fact
two
is,
network, right.
you can walk into most production companies, if, like we were talking about, characters that pop or an idea that really has bite to it, you can walk in with something that honestly has been done on a hand cam. Because really what they're going to do is they're going to put budget behind it, and if you're partnering with a production company, it doesn't need to be as polished. They just absolutely have to see that you've got that je ne sais quoi, that you've got that certain something that's going to hook a network, because that's all they're interested in. They don't care if you've got super polished, because they won't be using your editors, and they probably won't be using your cameras or any of that other stuff.
but
if you're going to do it yourself, you definitely need
They're
to.
smart enough to, and this is the great advantage with working with a production company, they know rough stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They look at that all the time. So you walk in with a proof of concept that you made for nothing just by, beg, borrowing, stealing, whatever, and you hand that to the production company, you're good.
Also, a point to note, because in the tips and tricks, they said, don't steal anything off the internet. The wonderful thing about doing something that's never meant to be seen other than in private meetings is you can steal pretty much whatever you want.
And they do.
And you can't. And I'm not saying that to say use other people's work disingenuously, but if it helps you to sell that project, it's my understanding is it's totally covered under fair use, because you're just using it to give an example of something. You're not actually claiming that you did it, right? If you're not claiming you did it, you can use all sorts of you can use music that would cost you $50,000.
Sometimes you can slap a little label on it that says not for distribution or whatever, you know what I mean? And they'll see that, but you don't even have to do that. But you hand them this demo reel, and you use whatever pop music you want, you use whatever, you find clips here or there, whatever to throw it in there.
That being said, this is not legal counsel.
That's right, this is not legal counsel. But they do it. I've seen production companies in LA do it.
Yep.
So.
Because it helps you lower your budget, it helps you give what appears to be a more polished end result, and it's theft, but art, but theft, yeah.
I'm sorry, going back to what you were saying about, we're the opposite on the corporate end as far as being polished. We wanted to see it polished, That's
fair.
corporate clients do not have the vision of what it's going to look like when it's all done. Or we're going to, this looks rough, but we want to know it's going to look like this, and we want that.
Well, and like we said before, networks do too. If you're really pitching directly to a network, it better look
just like a
immaculate.
TV show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It better look like they could just take it immediately and put it up as an ad on whatever their channel
Exactly.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
So
have no
questions
vision.
in the back.
I have a question for Mike. I had an experience recently where I went to the client, I was pitching something, and I said, do you have an idea of budget range? And they said, well, we want it to look like this. And I said, okay, but do you have an idea of range of budget? And they said, no, just budget it out. So I gave them a low, medium, and high, and they saw the low and were like, oh my God, that's way out of our range. Do you, since you have an experience in production, you probably have an idea of how much things are going to cost before you get into it, but in your experience in the corporate world, do those people have some sense of what their dollars are getting them and what a reasonable value is?
That's a good question, yeah. A lot of times, no. I mean, they'll know what they've spent last year on the project. They'll know what they, on similar projects, but sometimes the budget does not matter on these things. That you tell them it's going to cost you $30,000 for this video. That, okay, but smaller companies are going to care more about the budget. The bigger companies aren't. They're going to care more about, like, is this going to look great, and am I going to look great, and can you get this done in time? So I mean, I've been given two. I think the A, B, and C options are a good way to go. Here's if you really want to do it, great. This is what options B is what it probably should cost. But if you're really low there, and if they tell you it's crazy, then what can you cut and make it work?
Brent, and, I'm sorry.
Jed.
Yeah.
You were touching on it a little bit before in terms of when you're pitching and the concepts you're coming up with. How deeply do you flesh the idea out? Are you doing a lot of shooting yourself? Or are you finding talent to be attached to that or as a part of it? Is it just an idea or is there always talent involved?
That depends on how much you want to participate in the money at the end. If you have the talent and it's signed and it's your idea, even if you go to another production company, you're going to get a lot more money in terms of what the kind of agreement they're going to have to make with you. You're going to share in what are called producer fees. If you go in with just a straight up idea, you'll probably get a much smaller amount as having participated in the development of something. So yeah, generally the more fleshed out it is, the better off you are, and that translates into the percentage that you're going to be given of the monies from the project.
As far as the idea is concerned, what you have to walk in with is you have to have something a guy at Natural History New Zealand told us is called the machine, right? The machine is the repeatability of the episode. All episodes follow a formula. Going back to Mythbusters, they have the myth, they look at the myth, they examine some stuff, they set up their experiments, they do their experiments, they bust or they do the myth. That's the show. Always, every episode, bam, 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 right? And so you need to have a good handle on what that is. That's usually where the dazzle in the delivery comes from too. You know what I mean? Where this is new because the machine works this way, right? So when you're fleshing out your idea, it's not just this meets that. It's also here's the way that the episode works, and then from that you can pop off maybe 2 or 3 examples. We do a weather testing show, and we're going to show like all the effects of
We're going to shoot 2x4s through houses.
Shoot 2x4s through houses, and we're going to test this, and we're going to do this, and this is how we're going to test it, and blah blah blah, and then we'll come out the back end with our show, right? You know what I mean?
Does that answer your question, or is there?
Well, I'm curious how you guys work. It sounds like you're kind of doing a little bit of...
We try
everything.
Yeah, exactly. If we're sitting in a meeting and everything we've done is a bust, we'll pitch off the top of our heads if they'll give us more time, right? I'll just be like, let's do a show about...
No, we don't force them to sit down and listen to us until they kick us out of the building. That's not the way it works. But if the meeting has been 5 minutes and we're dead in the water...
burned through it.
We just keep going, man. Yeah. We'll take our half-hour thank you and then we'll leave.
You can soft pitch anything, and it's great to have a whole bunch of ideas in your head, but realize if they do say, oh, hey, give me paperwork on that, all you're really doing is setting yourself up to go do all that same work once you get home. right? So develop the ideas that you really want to do, but yeah, I would say don't limit yourself if when you're in there, you have a whole excess of time during your meeting. Yeah, we pitch whatever they'll let us
We have
pitch,
about right
essentially.
now 7 really solid ideas that we're throwing all over the place. We're sticking on one because we've signed paper for it, but we have about 7, and we have full
One
write-ups
has a
for
completed
free.
one has a completed taster reel for it.
Right.
2 more are in the middle of being shot, and the rest of them
Have treatments
Treatments
or
or-
just happy ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the treatment is like that 5-page write-up that I can hand to them. And before I ever hand that to them, I'm going to modify it after our initial pitch conversation. That was a very long-winded answer to your question.
Well, so you guys are generating ideas and you put them in your own machine that you to develop, and it sounds like some of them are closer to.
Oh yeah.
And they can get picked up at any point.
There's people involved, there's talent involved.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's some shooting,
Yep.
there's characters.
You can get picked up
And
at
some
any
of,
point.
some of them have no talent affiliated with them as yet because they haven't kind of risen to that point. And I mean, but if there are several of our concepts that if all of a sudden one of these production companies called us out of the blue and said, oh, hey, remember when we talked about, the talk show or the reality show or whatever it was, I mean, we'd be finding talent for that, or we'd be farming that part of the work immediately. Because it would, does that make sense? It would rise to the top. So you're always trying to do the most development work on whatever you think has the best shot at that moment of getting picked up.
I have one more question. Go ahead.
Your ultimate goal in this, is it to become the executive producer of a show, and financially, is that the best position to be in? You pitch an idea, they like the idea, whether you partner with a company or not, is that from a profitability standpoint ultimately where you want to be?
My goal is to be able to tell people I'm a television producer and not have it be a kind of lie. I want it to be the truth. No, I think that's a legitimate question. My end goal would be that we could, as a company, not even necessarily me, because it's not about me, but that we as a company could go in and pitch to a nonfiction channel, or have sufficient context to pitch nonfiction, to pitch fiction, to pitch film, to pitch anything you really want, and that's a lofty goal. We'll probably be lucky if we ever even break into nonfiction television. But I would say stick to the title and the thing that you really enjoy doing, that you really want to do. Producer is definitely my assignment of choice. He gets producer fees because we co-develop things together, but I think director and editor are what he enjoys more.
Showrunner is probably what I enjoy
He
more.
wants, that's his coveted title.
There is no real, television's different. The directors aren't like film directors, they're guests. And they come in and they do what you tell them to do, The showrunner is really the guy who's kind of like in the director's chair, but he's more of a producer. He says, you're really great at doing this, you're really great at doing this, I want it done this way. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where I want to head. He wants to head in the producer thing. He's really
Because producers fire showrunners.
They do. And he's got the ideas, that he does. He has a lot of really great ideas, and so he'll throw the ideas out, and I love trying to make the ideas reality, and so the idea is to do that, right? But we don't want to go lower than that, because then you don't make a piece of the gross.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you all.
Why, thank you, sir. I'd like to add one more thank you to Brent for organizing this meeting and hosting it, and for the wonderful name of his company, Groovy Like a Movie. Just so you know, this stage can be rented. Okay, he has a great amount of equipment and assets to produce really good work. So keep him in mind. One last thing, you notice the video loop that's playing out in the lobby. If you're a MCAI member, make a 1-minute chunk of recent video that you've done and send it to president@sdmcai.org. And I will put it in that loop. I'll put your name and title or production company on it, and your work will play. So that the purpose of that is so that we can see who we're the work of who we're meeting at the meeting, so that we know who does what and what kind of work, and know more about each other. All right, so thank you for coming, and we will see you next